the Traveling Black Women podcast, where we are talking to Black women around the world. I'm your host, Nadine, and I am so excited to take you on a journey with fearless Black women exploring the world. Each episode, we uncover hidden gems, share travel hacks, and hear inspiring stories from incredible travelers who look just like you. So whether you're a seasoned globetrotter or planning your very first adventure, we've got something special for you. So stay tuned and let's dive into today's episode. Hey y'all, welcome back to another episode of the Traveling Black Women podcast. I'm your host, Dr. Nadine Duncan, and today we are going to jump into some Black travel data. Yes, we're going to talk a little bit more about Black travel and how we are showing up in this billion-dollar industry. Now, you know how it is. You get to a hotel, you open that amenity kit, and you immediately realize that there's nothing in here for us. The shampoo, the soap, the lotion really caters to our skin, our hair, nothing. The soap is dry. The shampoo is dry as well. The lotion is watery. I mean, you might get 1 to 2 hours of moisture of being moisturized, but that's it, you know, and then them little shower caps aren't covering anything, especially don't cover these locks. So you don't show up in the details. And the only thing that is universal is the toothbrush, the sewing kit, and that's pretty much it. It doesn't seem like a big deal at the time. But then when you start to realize how much of the small details we're left out of, it starts to feel like I don't belong here. It's such a subconscious process, right? It's such an indirect subconscious process. But the reality is we're putting over $145 million into the travel industry. So we shouldn't feel that way. Now, I don't have the full study. I attended a workshop the other day with MMGY, Black Travel Alliance, and the National Coalition of Black Meeting Professionals. And they conducted the study and they presented it. They gave us an overview and the actual report is about $2,500. Now, granted, the report is really geared towards the hotel industry, tourism industry, you know, places that really are catering to different demographics and need to understand and know those demographics. But as I sat through that workshop, I realized we need to know this too, right? We need to know our value, our worth, and how powerful we are in this industry. With all the stuff that's going on now, this is another place for us to really recognize our worth before it's too late. And when I say before it's too late, before it's like, oh, now we have to prove it. No, this is supposed to be the soft life era. This is supposed to be a soft life space. Let's prove it along the way. You see what I'm saying? So I thought it was just really important to kind of like throw in here. Got some other stuff off of my list for what I wanted to talk about over the course of this season. And I just kind of stuck this in here because I thought it was really cool to talk about and good for us to know. You think about fast food restaurants and whether or not they'll switch up their menu for the local culture, but hotels, they don't do that. You know, they seem like they constantly or consistently cater to one type of person. And I think it's high time that with all these people pouring into the industry, that we see a little slice of ourselves and everything. And I'm not talking about the artwork because everybody loves Black artwork, right? Everybody has a Black painting on the wall. Great. I'm not talking about that. I'm talking about what's offered in small moments. What types of shampoo do you have? All these things seem so trivial, but when you have those moments, just like with Band-Aids a couple years back, when you have those moments of realizing I could have seen myself in this too, and how long have I not seen myself in this? It's kind of an interesting internal experience. And I'd be lying if I didn't say that we all have some piece of that sometimes when things show up for us and it's like, this was made for us. I think the first time that I ever saw toiletries in a hotel that I was comfortable using was in Kenya. They use products made by their local Black artisans. So the lotion is going to have that shea butter base or like a creamier base that you feel like, okay, I could actually put this lotion on and wear it all day. Where it just feels like it's not just that it's quality, but that it is catering to my type of skin, my type of hair. And I thought that was really interesting because I didn't realize how aware of that or unaware of that I was. And when I became aware of it, it was like, oh man, how often did I just kind of shrug this off? Black Travel Box is another company that actually exists here in the US where they create travel size soaps and lotions and things, and they all smell amazing. Shea butter base. I mean, the reality is, yes, you're still bringing it with you, but just to have something that size that I didn't have to scrape out of my own container and force it into another one to travel with, it's actually kind of nice. And these are the small moments, the little details that you don't even realize affect you until they do. Until you're like, oh wait, this is prepared for me, with me in mind. So now there's a feeling of belonging that you didn't even know you were losing at some point. So the main question here is, how does all of this change? How does this become important? Well, first of all, showing up disrupts narratives automatically. I know a lot of times we ask ourselves, do they like Black people? What is my experience going to be like? And we're hesitant because we don't see certain things or we don't see certain people there. But the reality is, by us simply showing up, we're already disrupting a narrative. So today, as we dive into some of this data on these Black travelers, think about what does this look like for me? How am I showing up here? Is this part of what I would say for myself? Because the more and more that we show up in spaces that we once didn't think we belong in, the more and more people have to simply pay attention. And now when you're talking about billions of dollars, you better pay attention. All right. Let's dive into the data. So first up, 76% of Black travelers are planning vacations in 2025. And I know that with everything going on with flights and everything, that some people are canceling vacations or they're a little bit more hesitant. But, I'm going to be honest, and this might feel a little bit like apples and oranges, but we drive past car accidents and don't stop driving. Why should we stop flying? I get that you don't have as much control, right, over what happens in a plane versus a car. I understand that. But I just really feel like if we live in fear around this, it is going to be another reason to keep us stuck within these borders. We have to move with faith, whatever that faith is to you. We have to move with faith on this, because to be stuck somewhere simply because of fear is going to do more harm than good. All right, so let's talk about money. The average Black traveler is spending $3,000 on domestic trips, $2,992 to be exact. Meanwhile, international trips cost less than that. Now, I get it. It's a bigger process, more time. You could be looking at flights that are anywhere from 12 hours to 15 hours, a combination of flights that might be 24 hours. So I do understand all of that. But sometimes it's just worth it. Our summer retreat to Kerala is in the 1800s. Most of our international trips right now are within the $2,000 to $3,000 price mark. And then, of course, you add your flight on, and then you're looking at over 3,000, somewhere over 3,000. So even if it's a matter of, but they are longer, so you do have to take more time off, or it's further to get to, and all these different things. The reality is we got to stop acting like traveling abroad is so expensive, because sometimes it's just not. It's actually the smarter choice, the cheaper choice. But if the concern is really your time, and if you're even ready, then we have to start saying that, so that way we can recognize that financially we are definitely capable. It's just now we got to wrap our minds around it. That's two different things. So 79% of Black Americans mention safety as a top priority. And I get it. But here's the gag, right? And I know it's going to seem like I got a response for everything. And I do, right? I do, because I think this is great. Domestic travel is great. And us putting all this money in domestic travel is great. But I really, really, really want us to start focusing on what does it look like to travel internationally, and to travel far internationally, not just to Caribbean and Mexico, but to South America, Central America, Europe, Africa, Asia, to really get out there, right? I know a lot of people, for example, have their thoughts on Mexico. During the pandemic, I spent 3 weeks over there, and I felt safer there than in Atlanta. I mean, the mindset was different. There was this community over individualism type of energy, and people seemed to really understand that their actions affected others. No one was out there fighting about wearing masks or refusing to wipe their shoes, because they had these little water buckets that you'd have to step in and then step on a towel before stepping into all these stores and restaurants. No one fussed. They just did it and kept it moving, went and sat down and ate their taco. It wasn't a big deal. But meanwhile, I'm watching TV, and in the US, folks are out there tussling in Home Depot over their rights. It's my rights. Just to wear a mask. And it's what is the big deal? But standing outside the US for those 3 weeks really is what made me hyper aware in that moment, or during that time, about how individualistic and honestly how selfish American culture can be. And I think that in itself is why travel is so important, because it really helps to shift your perspective. And it's not so much about one being wrong and one being right, even though there are aspects that I agree with and I don't. But it's more about, how can I look at this from a different lens? How can I broaden the way I look at the world and the way I look at different things? And how can I keep my mind open to recognize that everything I think I know, I probably don't? That experience did that for me. The other thing that came out in this study was word of mouth is still our top motivation for travel. We go where we see people going. And I get that, because seeing is believing. But see, here's the thing. There always has to be a courageous few that go before it's popular. When I moved to Abu Dhabi in 2018, 2010, teaching abroad in the UAE wasn't a thing in our community. I found a job on Craigslist, y'all. I found it on Craigslist. I don't know if y'all remember Craigslist, but I found it on bootleg Craigslist. And the interview was in a hotel. So my colleagues at work, they were, oh, y'all about to get you, because I had another colleague that was coming with me as well. Y'all about to get trafficked, y'all signing up to be sex trafficked. It was a mess. I mean, people were being funny, but at the same time, it was kind of like, what are we signing up for? But y'all, that Craigslist ad turned out to be the most transformative 3.5 years of my life, and low key, I'm sitting here today and not in a toxic Atlanta schoolhouse because of that decision. And now I did come back and go back into the school system, but now I had a different mindset. Now my mind was open differently and I saw different things for myself. I wasn't chasing down being an administrator anymore, So all of those moments made me really think like, oh man, had I not had that experience, nothing would have shifted for me. I'd have still been shucking and jiving somewhere trying to make sure that I fill up my 403B, and hopefully I live long enough to experience it. Another thing that came up is that more of us are traveling specifically to experience Black culture in other places. I think this is important because we have to expand our worldview of what Blackness looks like. Sometimes we box ourselves even into one iteration of Black culture. And this, like wanting to go and experience Black culture in other places, really forces us to see that there's so many ways to define Blackness. I think that in itself is freeing, because we don't always talk about how often the double consciousness plays a role in what we expect of ourselves and what we expect from our direct community, the people around us. The amount of times I've heard, why are you going to do that? Why are you going to go there? That's for white people. Those types of things where it's just like, no, actually it's not. No, actually I can go here. Actually, I do want to go to Switzerland. I want to see the Swiss Alps. I do want to go to Vienna. I want to see the Christmas markets. Like, yeah, I get it. These are spaces where there's not a whole lot of people that look like me, but I want to see the things. I want to experience it. And then I'll go somewhere else. And I think that's really important for us to be aware of. There are ways to just move about the world freely that we deserve just like anybody else. So now here's my favorite part of the study, right? These are pretty much the biggest takeaways from the entire study. Now, again, I did not get access to the whole study. It is about $2,500. You have to buy it from MMGY, and the proceeds go directly to BTA and the National Coalition of Meeting Professionals. But this overview was like, oh man. So it was pretty much enough for me. And again, that's why I was like, let me add this to my schedule and talk about this, because I really want us to know our value in this industry. So my favorite part was the fact that we are spending $145 billion on domestic leisure travel alone. That's a billion with a B. That doesn't even include international travel. And this is major because it seems like we're moving away, or not seems, we are moving away from consumerism and instead investing in experiences that will improve our quality of life. That's important because that says we are breaking generational curses. We are changing the way things are for the next generation. And that's super important for us to recognize. A lot of times we don't recognize how we're creating history until after it's created. I think it's important for us to watch ourselves go through this as we go through it right now. The top domestic destinations that came up, Florida, California, Texas, New York, Georgia, they are the main places that Black travelers are traveling. I was super shocked that Nevada, Vegas, and Louisiana, New Orleans weren't in the top 5. But, the data is the data. Because I'm like, okay, I know Vegas got our people in a chokehold, but that's me making assumptions. So data is the data. So here's my question. I am still wondering what it is that really stops some of us from traveling internationally. Now, according to the study, it seems like it's the planning. The process is a little bit longer, and that makes sense. There's the visa. How long is it going to take? What flights am I going to use? Where am I going to stay? Do I need a tour guide? Can I navigate it on my own? There's all these questions that go on that are much different than just going to another state. Money, for example. How do I convert this money? Is USD higher? All of these different things. But that's pretty much why we exist. The Traveling Black Women Network started for that reason. Now, I didn't have this data then, but I knew that because it was somewhat difficult to think about where to start when you're planning a trip, I knew that's what kept a lot of us from going. So my whole thought process between that point and now of creating a travel resource network was not just to become a travel agent and do it for people, but to actually create a space where people can learn how to do it for themselves, whether that be through reading a guide, talking to people, seeing it online. And that's important to me because one, I'm an educator at heart through and through. But two, if you can do it on your own, you don't have to wait for anyone else to do it for you. You have more flexibility of price. You have more flexibility of what you want to do. And you have more control if anything were to go wrong. So here are some of the numbers as to why we travel. So the motivation of why we travel. Relaxation was at the top of the list. 86% of Black travelers are like, y'all, we want the soft life too. And it makes sense because we work so hard. And I would love to see the gender breakdown on this. Like I said, don't have the whole report, but I would love to see the gender breakdown on this because I feel like there's a lot of us as Black women who are just like, okay, I need a break. I need a break. And it better be a good break. It better be a real break. Then right after that with 83%, visiting somewhere new is a big deal. And that speaks to me. So the next three, like just in the order that they were, what really spoke to me. So it's visiting somewhere new, expanding worldviews, that was 74%, experiencing different cultures at 73%, adventure at 69%, and self-discovery at 63%. All of those things said to me that we are looking for new and better experiences. We're looking to really improve the quality of our life by just opening up our minds to different experiences, doing things that we were scared to do before. That's your 69% of adventure. Figuring out who we are, how we show up in the world, defining ourselves for ourselves. That's the 63% of self-discovery. All those things really stood out to me because I really feel like we have to be aware of how we're showing up. So that means hotel industry, hospitality industry, tourism industry, all these spaces that have historically catered to one particular clientele or demographic, they have no choice other than to cater to us. That's also why we introduced our smaller trips this year, to make international travel feel attainable. So even if, we have the resource and the thing, then it's like, yeah, but I just still don't want to do all of this myself. That's fine. That's why we introduced the small group trips. Like, we still want people to go see the world. We want international travel to feel attainable. And I think many of the destinations that we've been put on the calendar align with these motivations. There are obviously brand new places. You do have the opportunity to relax as well as experience adventure. You will be experiencing different culture. There will be some element of self-discovery in it. And in all of it, your worldview would have expanded. We have to show up to disrupt narratives. We have to be present. We have to be there. And we have to know how impactful we actually are. I want us to really sit with that. We belong in this space. And the more we continue to show up with the knowledge of how we're impacting this space, the more this space is going to have to adapt to include us as well. We are shaping the travel industry with our dollars. Our preferences, our experiences, they all matter. And when you're talking about billions of dollars, $145 billion, who wants to lose that? Not me. I ain't got it, but you know what I mean. So I hope by the end of all this or soon we start seeing things as simple, because I know it seems small, but things as simple as a bigger shower cap. I need something to cover these locks when I go into your hotel. So as soon as I walk into a hotel with shower caps that fit over these locks, I'll know. Well, until next time, y'all, it's always going to be a journey, but at least one box can be checked. Larger shower cap. Thanks. Oh man, until next time, y'all, get out there and see the world. And if you don't want to see the world alone, we've got so many resources for you to join us or for you to prepare with us and go do your thing. All right, y'all. Thank you so much for tuning in to the Traveling Black Women podcast. You can find us online at www.travelingblackwomen.com. And there you can find plenty more travel resources to help you plan your very next trip. We've got travel guides, we've got a blog, we've got our vlog, and you just listened to our podcast. I look forward to seeing you around. Thanks for tuning in.